Hello everyone, welcome to FPL BlackBox. My name is Az and I am joined by a new Mark. It is not the Mark Southerns you all know and love. It's the FPL General. How are you, Mark?
I'm good, as good to be here. As someone who sits down every week with a cup of tea to watch this, it feels very strange to be on. I need to remind myself I need to actually chime in and talk back to you
Yeah, it
rather than
would
just
be
listening.
nice.
So yeah,
I mean, Mark normally carries us, so you're going to have to do the heavy lifting. It means I'm in charge of tech today. I hope that you all heard the sting and you can hear us now. And I haven't seen anyone saying they can't hear us, so I assume everything's going well. I've done a load of tables. Mark sent me 13 tutorial videos on how to set all this up. And then managed to mess up some of the tutorials, and I had to fix them with about 10 minutes to go. So it's literally like it always is on BlackBox, absolute carnage. You don't see any of this, Mark, behind the scenes. But thank you for joining me. It's great to have you here.
yeah, good to be here. Like I said, tune in every week, so it's nice to be here. And as an auto sub for Mark, hopefully it's something like a 6 pointer performance rather than the usual 2 pointer off the bench. So
The
yeah, been looking
Livramento.
forward to this all day and plenty to talk about this week.
Absolutely. Yep. So the format will stay pretty much the same. We're going to go over our game weeks. I've got Mark's as well, of course, even though he probably doesn't want me to go into too much detail about it. We've got the great and the good. We've got some team data. We've got some player data. We're going to cover all the positions. We've got some predictions as well, and the BlackBox League, and all of that good stuff. So, I mean, I don't like to, I'm trying to be humble, but I'm going to go first with my team. I had another good week, Mark. 75 points. For podcast listeners, Ramsdale in goal with 7, Trent with 12, Cancelo with 14, Reece James coming through again with 7, Salah with 10, Foden with 3, Rafinha with 9, Mbomo with 2, Smith Rowe with 8, he's been brilliant, Vardy with 2, and Tony with 1, and then Foster, Duffy, Livramento, and Antonio on the bench. So Foster and Livramento on my bench, obviously got points from them. It would have been about a 20-point bench boost, which would have probably been I'd have been pretty happy with that. What do you think about people who bench boosted in a single game week? Because we're going to talk about FPL Focal, who's second in the world right now. I did an interview with him for Scout. He bench boosted 26 points, I believe, and up to second.
Yeah, I'm quite jealous. I think I had 26 on my bench as well without bench boosting. Yeah, I think the more seasons we get, the more seasons we play, I'm more and more open to the idea of the single game week bench boost because, like yourself, probably many seasons of bench boost in a double game week and it just turns out to be a disappointment.
Mm.
You're lucky if you get over 10 points a lot of the time. So yeah, it's last week, the goalkeeper is probably the most important position on your bench boost and it was a good week with Foster. So yeah, I think this season where a lot of us are playing with very strong squads, we've got very strong benches because of the rotation fears and that's kind of what put me off last week is when you've got players like Chilwell, Cancelo and these guys and even Mbumo, in my head it's quite hard to get 15 players on the pitch this season.
Mm.
It worked like a charm last game week, but I think even more so now when we get into the busy spell of fixtures, there's going to be more rotation. So it still is quite hard to get 15 players out. But even if you get 14 on a bench boost, you have a good chance of doing well. So yeah, it's well done to people who did well last week,
I
and
mean,
it's
it's
certainly if it lines up again in a single game week and my bench looks strong, I'll be giving it strong consideration.
well, we'll talk about my bench again because my bench is looking pretty good again this week. I mean, it's the penalty save, isn't it, from Foster? I mean, you've got a bit of a gift in the 4 million goalkeeper anyway, and then you're not expecting much against Arsenal, and then he gets a clean a penalty save in that. I mean, there's a hell of a lot of luck because I mean, for me, for example, I would only have had Livramento coming in with points if Foster hadn't made that penalty save, and then I'm looking at what like a 11, 12 point bench boost, and it feels like it's a massive, waste of the chip. Whereas you just got to get lucky and hit that haul, but it's so hard to predict.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, there's going to be a lot of weeks. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of weeks where we have the strong benches, and it's just that fear, isn't it, of getting 15 out. But I think the bench boost chip anyway. It's a
I
very
hate it.
overvalued chip. It's one of the best things about using it is just getting it out of the
Yeah.
way, whether you get 10 points or 25 points, because for the rest of the season, once you use your bench boost, you're focusing on your starting 11 then, because you don't have to worry about having decent players on your bench. So yeah, I'm all for getting it out of the way at some point, even if it is a single game week when things line up nicely for your 15 players.
Yeah, I mean, it's a chip that's hard to kind of work out how effective it's been, because the other chips you can just add them to your score and pretty much get a good sense of it. But the bench boost, if you've had to wild card before or plan your team around getting these 15 out, you wonder how many points you might have lost by taking hits and extra transfers, of not putting all your money into your starting 11, having to get a strong bench just for that chip. So yeah, not my favourite. But yeah, anyway, 75 for me, up to 9k in the world. Never been this high at this stage of the season. Onwards to the top 1k, I guess, hopefully. We'll talk about some of our moves in a bit. You had a decent week as well. You're right behind me, 34k, 64 points this week. Do you want to just go through your team for the podcast listeners?
Yeah, we've kind of been following the same trajectory over the past couple of game weeks. I just need to get that one last push to try and get closer to the end of those rankings. So yeah, for the podcast listeners, Ramsdale on goal with 7. Trent and Cancelo did the business at the back. Chilwell 2-pointer. Salah captain with 10. Son blanked. Mbumo blanked. Rafinha with 9. So glad I've held on to him. Up front, nothing as usual. Antonio, Vardy and Tony getting 5 points between them. And then don't look at the bench, please. Foster 11, Livermento 6, Ben White with 8, and Brownhill with 1. So yeah, it's about 26. I haven't got the calculator right, but it's 25 or 26 points. So overall, good game week. Yeah, 64 points. I played the wild card game week 8, and I think it's 4 green arrows on the bounce since then. So it was a successful wild card. But happy with my squad. But as I'm sure we'll talk about later, there's a lot of players that are not there that I would like to have. Players like Reece James, Phil Foden, Jota, Harry Kane. So there's lots of choice at the moment.
There is indeed. And you've got Tony and Bomo, everyone was hoping for points against Norwich. Of course, didn't deliver even slightly. We're going to be talking about Tony a bit. There's only one striker that's really worse than Ivan Toney, and it's a certain Harry Kane on the stats, just to give a bit of a spoiler as to what's coming up. You've gone Son. You've moved early for him. You can't have been very impressed with what you saw against Everton, but hopeful for returns in the next games, right?
Yeah, it was a fixtures pick really. So what I did last week was I had 2 free transfers, and I basically had a choice. I could have just did 1 free transfer and did Diaz to Reece James and carried the other free transfer, and I kind of regret not doing that now. Instead, I used the 2 free transfers, got rid of Diaz and Mason Mount, and brought in Son and Ben White. So obviously just 1 free transfer now. Son disappointing, but again, it wasn't a 1 week transfer in. He's got Tottenham have good fixtures, next 4 or 5 game weeks. So I'm hopeful that Heung-min Son will do the business. But I've been doing a lot of kind of reflecting on those moves during the international break, and I moved away from 4 big defenders. I've moved kind of back to a 3-4-3 now, and part of me is thinking I'm not sure if that was the best idea, because I've been talking all season about how these big defenders are doing so well. I could have just did Diaz to Reece James, stuck with 4 at the back. So, spoiler alert for my transfers, but one of the reasons I'm leaning towards banking this week is I feel like I might need to move back to 4 at the back. So yeah, again, just hopeful that Son will do the business over the coming game weeks, and if I don't get Reece James, hopefully he gets a few benches.
Yep. Sneezer Lasagna in the chat says, keep it simple, General, on a heavy stats podcast. This will be interesting. I think we're both. I mean, Mark is very stats, very, very statsy. I'm moderately statsy, but much more eye test. And I think we kind of disagree a little bit on some things. I go with my gut on some things, which, I mean, he does much better than me, so maybe it isn't the right attitude. But what's your kind of take on stats? How much do you use stats, like, generally in your decisions?
Yeah, I'm very much eye test first. It's just always been the way I've played the game. I've enjoyed, watching lots of Premier League games. Initially before I took FPL very seriously, it was always just match of the day on the weekends and basing decisions off that, 6 or 7 minute clip of each game from each game week. And then it's kind of, even though I work full time now in FPL, it's still very much watch as many games as possible. I watch every game that's televised in the UK, so it's probably 5 games a week. I'll record some of them, watch them on Monday or Tuesday when my wife's at work, and kind of analyze them that way. And it's, I don't really look at the stats until after I've watched the games. I think it would be silly to just watch games and not look at stats when you've got them available. It's part of a, bigger all-round picture. You watch the game, you kind of look at the numbers then to, either back up with what you've seen yourself, but it also sometimes makes you realize maybe something you might have missed in the game, because your eyes can play tricks on you as well. You can see what you want to see, and you can filter out what you don't want to see. And in terms of maybe watching players that you own more so than players that you don't own. So I think the stats is always a good kind of sanity check on the eye test. I do look at stats, but I don't lean on them very heavily. Usually my decisions are made from watching the games, and it's more just kind of it's more of a glance at the stats every week rather than a deep dive. I do look at them. I do find myself looking at expected stats more than I did a couple of seasons ago. I was quite reluctant and a bit stubborn in a way initially with expected stats because I always thought to myself, if I've done well in FPL without them, why use them now? But slowly I realised obviously they can be very useful and very helpful. Especially for people who don't get to watch as many games as me, I think expected stats are really good to give you a picture of what you've missed. But for me, watching games, I think if you can do both, if you can watch lots of games and you look at the numbers, I always think you see things in games that you won't see in the stats. A player's at the back post, the midfielder plays it to striker A, could have played it to striker B, doesn't show up in the stats, little things like that. That's what I'm looking out for when I'm watching games, because the stats will tell you a lot. But if you can add, you don't have to watch 4 or 5 games a weekend either. If you can watch 1 or 2 each weekend, maybe try and watch a team this weekend that you didn't watch last weekend, for example. So yeah, very much for me, it's watch as much games as possible and then see what the stats are saying as well.
I'm glad you said about expected stats, because we've got plenty of those coming. I know exactly what you mean about your eyes deceiving you. It's why I always watch Leicester and think James Maddison is going to be the player that I'm going to have to bring in, and then I check the stats and go, oh, actually he only had about 3 touches in the opponent's half and I should probably avoid him again, and then he gets benched and then never plays again. I know I keep going on about James Maddison, but there's such a player there. I'm just convinced.
You're his biggest fanboy.
I know. I'm convinced he's going to do well one day, but I don't know if it's going to be for Leicester anymore. Let's take a look at Mark's game week. Mark got 49. He was one of the unfortunate Sanchez owners who got sent off against Newcastle, obviously expecting points against that, but didn't get them. He had Cancelo and Trent and Chilwell, just like you, 14, 12 and 2. And then Janssen, who he had for Brentford, with great games, but the injury to Raya looks like it's really derailed them defensively. They look completely out of sorts. He had Salah captain, Foden, Son, Mbommo and Jota, all who blanked, and Tony up front, who blanked. So he only got 2. Well, I mean, Salah doesn't even really count. He only got returns from Cancelo and Trent, and then the rest of his players blanked. He had Foster and Livramento on the bench, like so many of us, and Antonio and Hwang. But yeah, game week rank of 2.4 million for him, and I believe another red arrow. Let's take a look at the great and the good standings. I've gone top, which is a small miracle, up to 9k. I'm about 12 points ahead of Tom Stevenson. I'm 21 points ahead of you, and I'm now 65 points ahead of Mark. So, yeah, surely I can ride this out. Although, as I mentioned before, Granville was once 100 points ahead of Mark, and Mark clawed it back over the rest of the season. So I need to make sure that doesn't happen. Some of the other interesting things on the great and the good. So everyone captained Salah. Every single sort of, great and good manager went for the easy route. There just didn't really seem to be any real alternatives last week. What's your take on that? It's a bit dull, isn't it? But do you think Spurs can maybe shake things up a little bit going forward with the fixtures they got?
Yeah, when I seen this graph last week from Greyhead that everyone did captain Salah, I was a little bit surprised because it was a difficult fixture against West Ham, who've been very good this season. Usually in the great and the good, you've got a few maverick managers in there. People like Magnus, who usually, quite often will go for, obviously a couple of weeks ago there was a lot of Havertz on that right-hand column, and maybe that was a factor that scarred a lot of people. Maybe that's why people defaulted to Salah for this game week, even though it wasn't the easiest fixture on paper. But like you say, Spurs now, with the good fixtures, there seems to be a lot of momentum gathering this week after Harry Kane scored about 72 goals during the international break. A lot of people seem to be leaning towards him now. And I think with the fixtures, and given that Salah hasn't been amazing the last 2 game weeks in terms of FPL points, I think people will start to look elsewhere. I'm slightly tempted myself to start looking elsewhere, but it's pretty scary. I try not to let ownership and things like effective ownership come into my FPL decision making. But sometimes I think you have to make exceptions. Like when Salah's ownership is at an all-time high. I hate owning a player, and as soon as as soon as the game starts, if you don't captain him, you're probably looking at a small red arrow. So yeah, it's tricky. I'm not a fan of captaincy in FPL, and this is a good example why. When you look in a mini league like the Great and the Good, and every single manager is captaining the same player, it's just so boring. And I just hope players like Kane and Son, hopefully Lukaku comes back into the mix. Hopefully Ronaldo with an upturn in fixtures in the near future as well. Hopefully it does shake things up, because, like you say, it's pretty boring, and it's quite hard to make up ground if everyone's just captain the same player.
Yeah, I think the problem is from in some ways it's a gift, because all you want from your captain is a reliable trickle of points. I mean, even Salah hasn't been doing amazingly lately, but he's been sort of ticking along with those assists, and obviously then had the big haul against United. But there's no players that I trust this season. Like, it's always been in previous seasons, we've always had like a Fernandes or a De Bruyne or a Vardy or just someone else who, I don't know, I feel like could haul. And I look at all my attackers and I just think, you're all just so unreliable. I don't know what I'm going to get from you in a given week, except for Salah. He's the only one who seems to be consistently putting in like ridiculously attacking performances. And that's why he's so great. So it takes someone really brave at the moment to go against that. And Spurs are like the ultimate sort of carrot on a stick, aren't they? Because we just haven't really seen anything from them to make me think they're suddenly going to click. But the fixtures are great.
Yeah, it's very hard to, when you've got such a reliable asset like Salah, the Spurs guys in particular, they haven't really shown the form that, you can confidently back them to put in a really good performance. We're hoping that there's going to be a big manager bounce, but it's not guaranteed. Leeds next. I think I've been saying the last couple of weeks, Leeds on paper, I think, is always one of the best fixtures for attackers. But, looking a bit deeper, they actually haven't conceded too many goals recently either, which gives me a little bit of pause about captain and Son or Kane this week. I've got Son, I don't have Kane, but I don't think there's much between the two of them anyway, which I'm sure we'll talk about soon. But yeah, I still think it's probably Salah for me for Game Week 12. But yeah, hopefully some of those others give us a decision to make, at least with the captaincy over the busy period.
Yep, absolutely. So 10 of the 15 great and the good managers are in the top 100k, and then 5 are outside. So it's different to last year, where a lot of sort of these kind of managers struggled, and it was only kind of late surges from a lot of people that kind of put them into this mark. It feels like the template was so strong at the start and it did so well that a lot of people have ended up in quite a good position. It doesn't matter if you listen to this, you're not in a particularly good position, but I can't remember a time when sort of so many people that I kind of knew and the Twitter stuff all had a good start. So that's a good sign that we can kind of push on to kind of bigger and better things. In terms of team value, I've got the most expensive squad. I think that's because I've got a huge squad. I mean, I went for Smith Rowe and Mbomo and guys sort of all rotating, and it means points on my bench, but my team value is going up. Yours is 103.4 to my 103.7. Mark's is 103.1. So we're 3 of the highest. Les Caldwell and Tom Stevenson, 103.4 and 103.5. And then pretty much everyone else is sort of around the 102, sort of 101 mark. So in terms of team value, we're doing quite well. Do you put a lot of stock in that at this stage of the season?
You know what? I'm looking. People can probably see me squinting at the screen there. It's because it's the first time. That's the first time I've actually realised what my team value is this season. So that tells you what.
There you go. We
stock
educate
I
on
put
this
into
podcast.
I totally ignore team value. I don't care what it is. It is what it is, basically. I don't look to build team value with early transfers. The only time I really make early transfers is, maybe in the first week or two of the season when there's no Champions League midweek and stuff like that. It's very low risk. Or if, I've got, zero point 0.0 million for a transfer, or maybe it's a case of if it comes to a Thursday night, and let's say this week I was doing Vardy to Kane, if Vardy was going to drop by 0.1, Kane was going to go up by 0.1, to me that's a 0.2. It's a change. It's an easy move, especially if it's a Thursday and you're close to the weekend. So yeah, I've never bothered about team value. I think a lot of people, obsess over it sometimes, which can maybe take away from the core of the game, which is just simply, getting the players that are going to get you points. As Joe famously says, it's points over pounds, and so I totally agree with that. It's the way I've always played the game as well. So yeah, yeah, to me, if you asked me before we start recording what my team value is, I couldn't. I wouldn't be been able to tell you what it is. So yeah, it's good. It's good to know.
No, to be fair, I'm the same. I got to admit, I do put some stock in early transfers, sort of, when you need to. I obviously wouldn't do them before a Champions League game if I can avoid it, but in terms of when there's a week and I've got the exact money or something like that, then I do think there's a sense, because some people just don't at all. They will always leave their transfers right until the Friday or the Saturday. But I do think there's some sense in building it up. But I think we've had I think it's Luke who says like there's always another solution. So if you can't get the exact player you want, you can always drop down and sort of find someone else. And I think that's fair. I don't think there's too many times where I can remember being like 0.1 or 0.2 off and being like, oh my God, this has cost me 40, 50, 60 points. There's, you kind of find other players to kind of fit in. Right, let's talk
one of my, when we're on the topic of team value, one of my favourite ever lines was from Tom Freeman when he said, he's like me, he doesn't bother about team value. He says there's always a solution. And that's the way I've always got it. If you're looking at a player and you'd like to get him on Monday, if it comes to Friday and you're priced out, there is always other alternatives. And just because a player, in my mind, the way I look at it, just because a player is more expensive doesn't mean they're the better pick. And quite often it's the cheaper guys who outperform them anyway. So, it's
going to be very interesting to get your take on Kane in a bit, who's one of the most expensive players. Right, let's talk some stats then. Let's start with some team data. So we're going to look at defence first. So, BlackBox and what we do here, I've just picked out some sort of quite interesting things from the season and over the last 4. So season data, Man City and Chelsea, unsurprisingly, top. Crystal Palace, though, 3rd for the season, despite having the worst run of games to this point, 20th on the fixture ticker. They've just been absolutely incredible, and we'll see on their attacking stats aren't bad either. They've now got a decent run of fixtures. Are they a team that you're thinking of investing in?
Yeah, definitely. Very, very impressed with what Patrick Vieira has done in the first 11 game weeks of the season. I think they offer options in almost all positions. And I think the most impressive thing is, like you say, the fixtures to start the season were not easy. So given that the fixtures are more favourable now, we should expect, good things from them. It was another really good result in game week 11, convincing victory, 3 points, clean sheet. So I know a lot of people are looking for a Sanchez replacement. I think Guaita's right up there as probably in the top 2 or top 3 replacement options. I think someone like Mitchell as a cheap defender. I know we don't really have space for too many defenders this season when we've got all the big boys and Livramento. And then Gallagher he's been one of the best players in the league so far this season. Deservedly got his England call up, and he's kind of a throwback. He's all over the pitch. He just seems to have that brilliant knack of just arriving at the right time, whether it's in the box or at the edge of the box. But what I like about him, he gets right into the 6-yard box as well. He's a box to box. I don't know where he gets his energy from because he never stops. And then you've got Zaha, who's a nice differential as well. Vieira seems to be getting a tune out of him as well, probably on penalties. I'm not too keen on Edwards or Benteke because they don't always play 90 minutes, either of them. We've seen Benteke, I don't think he started in the Manchester City fixture. But yeah, certainly Gallagher and Zaha, I think, are really, really attractive. And I think Guaita is a good option there as well.
Yeah, the trouble is, when Mark and I mentioned this before, it's, having this defensive wise, we're all on these premium assets, aren't we? Cancelo, Trent, James, Chilwell, all looking so good. And so it's hard to find room for the likes of Mitchell or, these kind of guys. They're just not as kind of sexy options, are they? But I mean, the stats do indicate there's going to be some clean sheets coming for them. So if we do see a time when we're going to be pulling money out of defence, I think Palace are going to be a team that we target because they're all so cheap.
Yeah, I think the issue with the Palace defenders is they're very unsexy picks. They don't offer much going forward. Anderson, Guay, Joel Ward, Mitchell, they don't scream attacking returns to you. You could, it wouldn't surprise me come end of the season and they've only got maybe 5 attacking returns between them. They're probably as boring as it gets when it comes to attacking.
Well, you've got Ben White, so you're not far off.
Yeah, well, at least he's on my bench most weeks. Yeah, I think I think during this busy period, if you are, maybe if you're like me and you've only got 3 big defenders now or 3 expensive defenders, you do have maybe the Livramento +1. Maybe if you don't want to, for example, if you're on Ramsdale and you don't want to double up with Ben White, then someone like Mitchell is probably a good option. I think he is the option I prefer from their back four. I think he does get forward. He's got a good left foot, so there could be a few assists there. But again, there's probably not much between them. I just can't bring myself to buy Joel Warren in FPL.
I know what you mean. Look at Man City at the top, though. 148 minutes per expected goal conceded, non-penalty. I mean, the next is Chelsea with 97, and then down to Palace 91. I mean, City, they're 15th on the ticker as well. So they, over the season, so they haven't had the easiest run of games, but you just can't create chances against them.
Yeah, and I knew it would happen. I knew as soon as I saw Diaz playing against Manchester United, it was always a clean sheet locked in as soon as I got rid of him. But I think with Diaz, I just got a little bit bored of having the double City defence. I think I got both of them on the wild card, and then they conceded in 3 games in a row. And Diaz, most likely it's 6 or 7 points or 2 points when you've got more exciting picks. Reece James, who I probably should have brought in, or just moving the cash into midfielder or up front felt better to me at the time. But yeah, I think if you're on the likes of Cancelo, one of the best players in the game, you do not sell him. If you're still on Diaz, I think he's a totally fine pick, especially now when we get into the busy period. He's probably going to play every game. But I'm quite interested in John Stones as well. It's going to be interesting to see if he can keep his place now. Laporte was suspended, so he came in. If he plays well, hopefully, I think he's only 5.3 million. So if he can lock down that starting place like he did last season, and he's shown he's got goal threat as well, it could be a nice cheap route into the City defence.
Yep. Spurs are down there on 13th, 19th on the ticker so far. So they've had a pretty tough run, but kind of mid-table. But when you look at them over the last 4, they've actually improved defensively quite a lot. They're up to 5th. And they were 16th on the ticker, so the fixtures, haven't been amazing, but there's clearly some defensive improvements with them. It was a mad game in the Europa Conference League with Conte's first game in charge, and the second game against Everton couldn't be more different. No chances, really solid, both teams, and just a really dull, boring game. So you kind of don't really know what we're going to get with them at the moment. And Leeds has the potential for anything, right? It could be a 4-4 or it could be a 0-0. It's both teams are so unpredictable.
Yeah, when it comes to Spurs defenders, I watched that UEFA Conference League, and first half you're thinking, wow, Reguilon, Emerson Royale, these guys are going to be absolute monsters. And then you watch the second half, and they were just absolutely all over the place defensively. So I think Reguilon and Emerson Royale are quite attractive options, especially for those who are going to go very heavy in defence. If you're going to go, some people will even go 5 wing backs now at this point, maybe fit in one of the Spurs guys. But to me, it's still very much, you're kind of backing them for attacking returns more so than clean sheets. Even against Leeds, I'm hoping Rafinha's going to nick one in that game. So yeah, I think Conte probably needs a little bit more time until we see them churning out clean sheets. I think the issue there is, and it has been for a while at Tottenham, there's always a lot of chopping and changing at centre back. He really needs to nail down which 3 he's going to play them every week, and I still think he needs to sign better quality centre backs as well. So I think that is a weak area of the squad, which I think most people probably agree with anyway. So yeah, Emerson and Reguilon look great, but it's probably not going to be too many clean sheets.
I love a wing back, Mark. I love a wing back so much. I'm half tempted just to go 4 wing backs, 5 wing backs, get them all. Yeah, we are going to talk quite a lot about Son and Kane, but I've been most impressed with Royale. I think he's been the one looks like he's going to be the one that's tasked with being the kind of main creative hub of the side. Because they're going to have to use Reguilon and him to create service for Kane, because no one else in the team can do it. So can he tighten them up? He's got a good record of tightening teams up, Conte. Has he got the players to do it? You talk about the centre-back. That's a bit debatable. But I think with this run of games, I think with everyone flocking to Son and Kane, I think those 2 wing-backs could be overlooked a fair bit.
Yeah, I watched a lot of Tottenham in the early part of the season under Nuno, and then I watched the 2 games under Conte recently, and it's almost like they've taken Emerson Royale under Nuno, taken him out of the team and replaced him with his twin brother, because he looks like a totally different player. He looks really, really good. He's obviously suited to the wing back position more than a more traditional right back. And yeah, he surprised me most in the 2 games so far. I thought it's going to be all about Reguilon down the left, but Emerson was really good going down the right as well. And quite often they were combining. Reguilon was swinging balls in, and Emerson was arriving, in the 6-yard box. I think he had a chance that it kind of hit off his knee or something and went over the crossbar from a Reguilon cross. And then you had the one Kane put in a brilliant cross for Reguilon, who should have scored and blazed it over. So if those two are going to be arriving in those positions, they're almost like, a light version of Chilwell and Reece James at Chelsea. So I had a question from someone today about they were wildcarding this week, and they were saying they were very tempted to get 5 wing backs, and it's very hard to say. It's not a good idea because it looks great at the moment. It might look a bit strange setting up with 5 defenders that are over 5 million. If you want to leave Livramento out of it and go really after those wing backs, but I think it's totally viable given. I think it's very important in FPL. You've got to move with the seasons, and this season, so far, it's the season of the wing backs.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have what, mate? You'd have Trent, Cancelo, James, Chilwell, and then one of Reguilon and Royale. I mean, it's not bad, is it? And they're all
sounds amazing, yeah.
They're all 6 million-ish. You think, we've got like Mbomo there. People might be still holding on to Sarr. Rafinha as well is doing well, but would you be surprised to see any of those 5 mentioned outscore him over the foreseeable future? I don't think so. I think it's completely feasible. It's a weird season because there's so many options and there's so few premium options as well that kind of experimenting and doing a few things we might not have done before might be the way to go.
Yeah, I think especially those of us who've been playing the game for a long time, 10 years, 15 years, it's probably harder for us to adjust to maybe someone who's only been playing for a year or two. But certainly, I always try and just play the season that's in front of me. And that's why I kind of regret moving away from the four big defenders last week. And, if they all look good again this weekend, for example, if Reece James looks good again in game week 12, I'm just going to reverse the decision and go back to 4 at the back along with Livramento, I think.
Yep. So Southampton top for the last 4 games. I mean, they had the second best fixtures on the ticker, but they are 140 minutes per XG conceded non-penalty. You talk about Vieira doing a good job at Palace, but I mean, Hasenhüttl's another rebuild job at Southampton after losing kind of 2 key players, in Vestergaard and Ings. And they're just going into games full of confidence now. They've got options up front. They're keeping clean sheets at the back. They're a team which quite a few people are still avoiding, but there might be some options there as well, right?
Yes, I think it's taken me a little bit of time to adjust my thinking on Southampton. For the last couple of seasons. It's been my first thought when it comes to Southampton is very weak defensively, avoid their defenders. And we got Livramento at 4 million, but we didn't really expect Southampton to perform well defensively. The clean sheets are a bonus in many ways because we got Livramento initially for his attacking potential. You look at the Southampton team, it looks out of shape at times. Kyle Walker-Peters playing over at left back. Yeah. Salisu didn't have a good start to his Southampton career, but now he's playing well. Bednarek, I wouldn't call him a top-class defender, but Ralph is getting a tune out of them. And what I liked I was watching the Match of the Day highlights today from game week 11, and there was comments from Hasenhüttl specifically on the defence after the game about having worked on it, and he was saying that we are much better defensively now, which he's very happy with. So that bodes well for those of us who do have Livramento. And again, if you don't have Livramento and you do have Robert Sanchez, McCarthy is another option. If you hate missing out on the Livramento points when everyone gets them, another way to get them is through McCarthy and those clean sheets as well.
Yep, absolutely. At the other end of the table, though, you've got Everton, Watford, and United. They're the worst over the last 4. Everton, though, 5th on the ticker over the last 4. They've had good games and just not delivered at all. Watford just looked like the whipping boys. But United 20th over the last 4. Bottom of the, worst in division. Worse than Norwich, Newcastle, Watford. It's an absolute shambles at the back for Man U. And, what do you make of it? You're a United fan, aren't you?
Yeah, I was trying to let that slip by without
I remember.
It's very, very depressing to see us 20th in a Premier League table of any kind. It just simply shouldn't happen ever. It's a complete shambles. I still can't believe how bad a pick Luke Shaw was to begin the season. He was one of my must-have picks, undervalued, season keeper. I think he scored about 13 points over the first 8 game weeks or something. Absolutely
I avoided
crazy.
him, Mark. Elite.
Yeah, you were one of the very few brave souls to go without him.
Went for Soufal instead, who absolutely bombed. Got me nothing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's probably why you're ahead of me in the rankings is because you didn't have Shaw, but you had Sufal, so you
No, didn't
definitely not the reason.
capitalise even slightly.
But yeah, obviously stay away from Manchester United defenders until things improve. It's a total shambles there, and yeah, it's very depressing reading looking at that chart. So hopefully you're going to move to the next one soon.
Yeah, well, just the final thought on that is obviously there's a good fixture run coming for United very soon. We've got game week 15. I've seen some people already talking about should we be thinking about Lindelof and De Gea and these kind of guys. And there's no one that I wouldn't back to score against them at the moment. And these stats just prove it. It's awful. It's absolutely terrible.
It's awful. And De Gea is cheaper than he's ever been. You know, De Gea was a 6 million goalkeeper a couple of seasons ago, and even now at 5 million, he doesn't even come into the conversation because we're just that bad defensively. And again, you've got to play the season in front of you. United are a bottom 5 defence so far this season, so yeah, just stay away.
Yep. Absolutely. Let's look at some attack data then. So over the season, Liverpool and City and Chelsea are top. Not too surprising there. West Ham in 4th though, having absolutely unbelievable season. Right down the bottom in 19th is Spurs. I mean, you talk about United being poor defensively. For Spurs to be 19th at this point with the quality they've got is that just blows my mind. Absolutely blows my mind. The only team that's doing worse than them is Norwich. They've got a minutes per expected goal, non-penalty of 99 minutes. So they're not creating a kind of a clear chance in a match. And they've got Harry Kane and Son up front. And yet we're all thinking of getting in on them.
Yeah, it's a nice reality check, I think, to look at this because we've got to remember what they've been like so far this season. And people, it always happens in an international break if a certain player bangs in 4 or 5 goals against extremely weak opposition, people start turning their heads and think, right, Kane's back, but he's not going to be playing those kind of teams. I know he's got good fixtures, but it's not the caliber of opposition that he was playing during the international break. I think the big thing people need to remember about England is when Kane plays with England, he's got quality all around the pitch supplying him with those chances. Whereas I think with Tottenham, they lack a little bit of that creativity in midfield. I think that's one of the biggest issues for Conte there as well. So yeah, it's if you're buying Kane or if you're buying Son this week, it's very much a fixtures pick. And I do subscribe to the idea that good fixtures can bring good form. And if at any point of the season, if Kane is going to get himself going, it's probably going to be over these next couple of game weeks. And I know the opposition was weak and you should take it with a pinch of salt. But I think when it's a striker, it's confidence is so important. And it doesn't matter who you're scoring against. If Kane's down the park scoring against his mates or if he's scoring against, the likes of San Marino, it's going to build confidence. And I don't know why, and there's no logic behind it, but I just have a feeling that Kane is going to do well over these coming game weeks with the fixtures. I'm probably not going to own him. Maybe that's a bit of FOMO there as well. But yeah, something's telling me that the stars are just going to align with the fixtures and with Conte, and that he is going to start banging in the goals again. So yeah, I can understand why people are doing it, and it's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out because it's going to go one of two ways. He's going to be amazing, and we're going to talk about captaining him again, or he's going to continue to be an absolute disastrous pick for 12 million.
Surely he can't carry on being as bad as he is. I mean, he's obviously such a talented player. You look at the goals he scored. I mean, I know, okay, San Marino and Albania, but look at the Albania goals he scored, and they were all different varieties. No one's doubting the quality that he's got. It's just, I guess, motivation and the service that he's getting around him. Yeah, really interesting. I want to touch on West Ham, though. I mean, West Ham were 19th on the ticker last 4, and they're 3rd in terms of minutes per XG non-penalty, 52.9. Only better by City, 50.3, and Liverpool, 38.9, who are sort of streaks ahead in terms of attacking potential, but potentially with some injuries. Mane and a slight doubt. Robertson as well. Could Simicast kind of come back in? But West Ham, though, I mean, David Moyes, when he took over, I put 50 quid on him to get sacked first. I think he was on like a 6-month contract or something, and their first 5 games were literally like City, Chelsea, Liverpool, United. I thought there's absolutely no way he's going to survive this. And I mean, what he's doing there, I mean, the performance against Liverpool again was just absolutely incredible. And we're going to talk about Bowen in a bit more detail as well. But there's also Fornals, who's playing kind of out of his skin. Antonio hasn't been getting the points, but he's still had chances. I mean, he had one where he was through on goal and just sort of fell over his own feet. He could easily have slotted that in. But lots of people are moving off West Ham. But is there maybe a case for looking at their attack in a bit more detail and bringing in, maybe considering the likes of Bowen?
Yeah, they're just such a good side, and we need to get into our heads that they are a top four side at the moment, and you're getting players in FPL from a top four side that are extremely cheap. We know about Antonio, like you say, the points haven't been there, but in terms of the eye test, I think the performance have been good. He's always there or thereabouts. He's playing the third pass rather than the assist. He's always heavily involved in the attacking play. So I've no doubt the goals will flow again for Antonio. Obviously, the big one is we just hope he stays fit over this busy period. But yeah, Jared Bowen is, he's the big one. I think I've added him to my watch list this week. I think he's the pick of the midfielders now. I think he's just got lots of different avenues to points. He's got the set pieces. I think he got the assist for Zuma's goal from the corner. Just a brilliant delivery, such a good left foot. And if Antonio does end up getting injured at some point, Bowen is usually the one who goes through the middle. So you've got yourself an out of position option there as well. So given that a lot of people have Antonio, you're probably not gaining much from him when he does score. So if you want to, gain something from the West Ham attack, you probably do need to double up. I think a lot of us stepped away from Ben Rama when the fixtures got trickier, which worked out okay. But I still think he's a good option as well. I think between Bowen, Fornals and Ben Rama, there's very little between them. On any given game week, any of them can score 10 plus points. So we're kind of spoiled for choice in the West Ham midfield, and I do find it quite hard to pick one out of the three. And Bowen just slightly edges it for me at the moment. So yeah, no issues for me with Antonio. I wouldn't really care if he blanked 5 in a row, which he might have done, because the performances are good. West Ham are great, and Antonio's just such a good striker.
Yep. Completely agree. Antonio's going nowhere from my side. Just point out a couple of these other ones. I mean, Brentford are fourth. Everyone's really gone off their assets. I mean, the performance against Norwich was awful. So many of us went hard on the Brentford assets, and there were 2 good games in the last 2. But the chances have been there, just they haven't taken them at all. We've all been left frustrated. I want to talk about Leeds as well. Leeds are down in 18th. They had the 3rd best fixtures over the last 4. But that right down in 18th, they're being literally dragged to results by Rafinha single-handedly. I mean, he's done better than I thought he would. I didn't really know if he could make the step up to this kind of consistent FPL performer, that's kind of kicking on. But where would they be without him?
Yeah, they would be in trouble without him. I mean, Rafinha's a tricky one. I've had him basically all season. I think I sold him for a short period when he was injured, and I got him straight back with the wild card. And he's the player in your squad if you own him. When you've got attractive assets like Jota now with Firmino out and Foden at City, it's kind of that spot in your midfield that you need to decide: is it worth keeping Rafinha when Leeds are pretty poor, but he is carrying them, or do you go for a player from a better team? And it's a tricky one. And it often crosses my mind, can I sell Rafinha? But then I just watch him, or I watch the highlights from the last game, and he literally is their attack, and he's just so direct. And at the end of the day, he's just such a good player. And in any game, in any fixture, he can get something. And he's got those avenues as well with corners and free kicks. And it was a free kick again.
Yep.
He just went straight in the last game. I think that's the second time that happened this season. So, 5 goals in 11. I don't even know if it's 11 because he might have missed 1 or 2 through injury and been away in Brazil and stuff. It's, for whatever he was, about 6.5 million at the start of the season. I still think it's excellent value. So for me, he's a keeper as well. I think he's one of those players during this busy spell, you don't need to worry too much about rotation because they simply have to play him because they don't have anyone else.
That's exactly what I was going to say. That's what I like about him. I think we're seeing him make the step up to elite player. I think we always knew last year that he had potential to do it, and I think now we're seeing it. I would be absolutely amazed if they can keep hold of him past the summer, because big club's going to come calling for him.
Yeah, for sure. He reminds me of. I remember in game week 1 in the Leicester title winning season, I was down to my 15th pick in my team, and I was sitting with my Auntie Mary picking our teams for the season, and I said to her, "Let's go for Mahrez. He's 5.5 million. He looked decent at the end of the previous season." Ooh. And only over 38 game weeks. And Rafinha reminds me of Mahrez, quite similar players, but I think Rafinha can be even better.
Yeah.
I think the sky's the limit for Rafinha. I think he can be one of the best players in the world. So it's exciting to see where he can go. And as long as he's about 6.5 million in FPL, I think he's going to stay in my team.
One of the best players in the world. Big words, Mark. Very big words. Final team I want to pick on here is Newcastle. Obviously, Eddie Howe's come in now. We're seeing a bit of a shake-up. Obviously, Dean Smith's gone to Norwich, who are also terrible on the attacking data. But Newcastle are bottom by quite some margin. 198.9 per expected goal non-penalty. Compare that to Liverpool with 38.9, for example. I mean, Howe's got a hell of a job to keep Newcastle up. I think we all know that. Bottom of the league, pretty much bottom of all of these different metrics that we look at, or near the bottom. Do you think we're going to see Howe start to get more out of players like Fraser and Wilson and St Maximin, or do you think he's going to adopt a kind of a safety first, more defensive approach? Because they concede too many goals and they don't score enough goals. So he's got. How do you address both? Especially with the January transfer window quite a while away.
Extremely difficult job. I mean, he's got to fix the attack, he's got to fix the defence, but he's got a lot of bang average players to work with as well. The January transfer window can't come soon enough. So I think initially I don't really have much interest in Newcastle at all to begin with until they get some better players through the door and let's see how he gets on to begin with. I think Wilson, at least he does have some good attackers. Wilson is proven, and he's proven under Eddie Howe as well at Bournemouth. So I do like him. He's got the penalties. St Maximin, we know, is a very good player. But after that, there's not a huge amount of talent in that squad and not a huge amount of creativity in midfield either. So, yeah, Wilson's on my watch list. He's probably the only one I'm interested in. St Maximin maybe will come back into our thinking, but I think it's hard to go St Maximin over Wilson when Wilson has the penalties, and he's just a much better striker. He's more proven. So yeah, not a huge amount of interest there apart from Callum.
Are we going to see Fraser assist, Wilson goal, Wilson assist, Fraser goal?
I think it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Hopefully they've put their differences behind them from their time at Bournemouth.
That's it. That's really interesting, that, isn't it? Because Fraser refused to play, didn't he? Because they came back after COVID and his contract was winding down, and he obviously wanted to keep himself, available to move to a new club, and they had a big falling out, and they really needed him during that relegation battle. And it's really interesting that Howe's come back in. Fraser must be thinking, "Oh God, I wish I'd been a bit nicer when Howe was around." I like Wilson. I think Wilson could enter back into our thinking. He's just one of those players who always seems to get something, doesn't he? He always manages to find a way to sneak a goal, even when Newcastle are poor. So if Howe can improve them a little bit and get a little bit more out of some of these players, Shelby can come in and he can start Almiron, hopefully a bit of creativity from him. We might start seeing Wilson do a bit better, but so injury prone as well. I'm just thinking of Ivan Toney because he's been so poor. Looking for players around the 6.5 mark, I do wonder if maybe under Howe, Wilson's going to be slightly better. But yes, we will see. Let's talk about some player data then. I've focused on some players kind of at the bottom of this. This is player data over the season, filtered by minutes per XGI, expected goal involvement, non-penalty. So Mahrez is top, which he always is. He's always top of these lists, but you can never bring him in because he never plays. Firmino's next. He's injured till mid-December, so that doesn't really help us. Let me look at some names we can think. Everyone's got Salah. He's third. Mane's there. His underlying stats are incredible, but he's so much money. You've got Mount, which is pretty much all off the back of that one performance against Norwich. And Tony is there. Now, Ronaldo is an interesting one. I know a few people in the chat are talking about Ronaldo, looking at United's attacking numbers. They're not particularly good, but it's Watford next. It's a good run of games from 15. I'm tempted to bring in Ronaldo this week and captain him. What do you think about that?
I don't think it's crazy. I think
it feels crazy.
I think for people who are considering bringing Harry Kane in this week and maybe captaining him, I think if you're thinking along those lines, you've got to think in similar terms with Ronaldo because it's a great fixture against Watford. I think when it comes to Ronaldo versus Kane, though, Kane feels better for the next maybe 3 or 4 game weeks, whereas with Ronaldo, maybe it feels a little bit more short term but then you could jump on Ronaldo this week, get the captain points, hopefully, and then maybe move to Kane the following week if Kane looks good this weekend. So yeah, I wouldn't stop someone from doing it.
That's good to know. I mean, we talked about benches a bit earlier. I mean, that's kind of the thinking with the bench I've got is that I can move to Ronaldo. And then if I do get an injury somewhere else, I've got the kind of squad to absorb it for 1 week, and then I can move to Kane because I don't really want Ronaldo against Chelsea. But then it is back against Salah again in a home game when we've just seen their attacking stats are the best in the league. So yeah, it does feel like a risk, but it's one. As we're going to see the captain's matrix a bit later. There just seems so few opportunities to back against Salah, and Arsenal have improved a lot, and Liverpool have these kind of injuries, just potentially with Mane out and Robertson. So maybe this is the week to roll the dice. Let's talk about 9 and 10. So Gundogan's right up there, 135. He was fairly popular at the start of the season. Obviously, a brilliant pick last year, but I don't see many teams at the moment. But his stats are right up there with top 10 levels. Everyone's got Foden. Everyone's going for Cancelo. Is Gundogan someone you think you could put against them, or is you just not really considering him?
When it comes to eye test, watching Man City this season, Gundogan often passes the eye test for me. He gets into really good positions, and I'm surprised he's only got 2 goals so far, because how often he gets into good positions, he probably should have more than that. And to me, it feels like he's still getting into the positions he was getting in last season when he was scoring all those goals. And I think he got 3 for Germany during the international break as well. So he's more of a goal scorer than he was maybe earlier in his career, or at least that I know of him. Being, in his early days at City, he very rarely scored. So I think he's a player. He's kind of bubbling under the surface, and he could explode soon. I do still think Foden is the go-to City midfielder if you don't have one. Cancelo's obviously probably the best pick from City. But if you're looking for a third one, or if you're looking to do something different, I do like Gundogan. The issue is the odd benching. I think he was benched a couple of games back, because I remember I added him to my watch list, and then he was benched the game after that, which is why I kind of gone off him. But again, I think he's a decent option, but I think there's probably at least 7 or 8 better midfield options at the moment.
What about Jota then? So Jota's next on the list, always does well on these lists when he plays. We assume he's going to be in the team now right until mid-December, but then it's the African Cup of Nations just after that, so he's going to be in the team for even longer. I did a video for Scout looking at sort of his points last season and his stats. He's not a particularly explosive option. He ticks over, which is kind of the opposite of what I thought he was. He very rarely actually hits double-digit points. I don't think he got any last season when he played over 45 minutes. I think he got one when he played like 26. We got 2 goals against Arsenal. He's had one already this season as well against United, but he's kind of a bit of a steady Eddie, which isn't the worst thing in the world for like a 7.5 million midfielder. Do you put him in like essential bracket, or do you just think he's like a decent option, or he's a frustrating one? What do you think? What's your thoughts on him?
Yeah, certainly not essential, but I think a lot more attractive now that Firmino's confirmed. It sounds like mid-December, which is a lot of games in terms of FPL at this stage of the season. You could get 5 or 6 game weeks before Firmino's back. So I think that makes Jota very, very attractive. I don't think I've owned him at all yet this season because I had Tsimikas at the start, but he's probably in my top 3 targets now, top 3 or 4 targets, due to the Firmino injury. It's FPL at its simplest. He plays for one of the best 2 teams in the league, and he's very, very cheap. I know he's been very disappointing so far this season, but I try not let that come into my thinking. A lot of those performances where 67, 70-minute performances are coming off the bench when it can be hard to get into games and stuff like that. I just think if he gets a run of 5 or 6 starts, he's going to get points. And like you say, he's been a steady Eddie so far. He's going to tick along, but he's a steady Eddie that has huge potential as well to be an explosive player. So yeah, I'm eyeing him up in the near future for sure.
Yep. Going a bit further on this. Gallagher's doing well, 24th on the list. We talked about him earlier, 4 goals, 4 assists. Reece James is just after him. You've got those kind of guys who are ridiculous cheap. And then we start looking at some of these other players. Vardy, 29th. Expected goal involvement every 188.7 minutes. It's really poor. He's been rubbish for a while. We'll look at him in forwards in a bit, but I bought him in and managed, just like I always do with Vardy, but he goes on these purple patches and he stops and he's just done for ages. And if you don't catch it just right with him, it can completely mess you up. But 29th for Vardy, but then 42nd for Son, 208.8. He's got 4 goals, 2 assists, but there's 41 players doing better than him in terms of these kind of expected metrics. Then we go down to 65th, Ivan Toney, 251. And I thought, God, that's terrible. That's got to be like the worst of all the popular players. Oh no, because after him in 68th place is Harry Kane with 1 goal, 1 assist, an expected goal involvement, non-penalty every 259.6 minutes. That is absolutely shocking. Would you ever have thought at the start of the season? I mean, I know things were bad with the Man City sort of thing that didn't go through, but would you have thought he'd be 68th on the list for expected goal involvement?
No chance. I think that's, of all the stats on the show so far, that is by far and away the most shocking one. I know Manchester United being 20th is not great either, but Kane to have even just the simple stat of 1 goal after 11 game weeks for a player of his quality, who takes penalties, who plays for a pretty decent side. Yes, they haven't been good this season, but yeah, it's when you simplify FPL, he's 12 million quid. He scored 1 goal this season. You know, why are we rushing to get him? If we're going to play the season that's in front of us, he's not the Harry Kane he was 4 or 5 years ago. So why are we paying 12 million for him, especially when we're going to captain Salah most game weeks? So, again, it's why I went for Son. I know Son's not much better in the stats there, but at least he's got a lot more attacking returns this season. And when I watch games, Son always looks sharper.
Yeah,
You know, he's the one running behind. He's the one who's got the pace. Obviously, a brilliant finisher as well. So, yeah, it's hard to make a case for Kane, really.
There's nothing you can't. I just don't think you can make a case for him. I think it's a hit and hope. It's just hoping that he completely changes his season with the good run of games they've got under the new manager, who has a good history and track record of getting the most out of his kind of front two. I think we're going to see a shift to 3-5-2 as well, and he's going to partner Son because they need to get another body in midfield. They need to get Ndombele in that team. They can't just completely rely on the wing backs. They can't play Skip when they've got Skip and Winks and that. They just there's no creativity at all with them. They need to get Lo Celso in, get Ndombele in, have Højbjerg sort of pulling the strings, and just get the ball up to those two. But it's going to be really interesting to see how this develops. I mean, Ivan Toney as well in 65th has been so incredibly disappointing. I mean, 30 plus goals in the Championship. I think we obviously knew that he wouldn't hit those heights, but I expected him to have 5 or 6 goals by this point. I mean, the fixtures have been pretty good, and they've been one of the best attacking sides in the league.
It's really frustrating. You showed that chart a wee while ago when Brentford were 4th, and that's why we all have Mbeumo and Toney, or a lot of us have Mbeumo and Toney. And even if you just have one of them, it's probably the most frustrating part of the season so far is having those guys, because the underlying numbers are good. Brentford look good in most games that they play. They play in exciting games with lots of goals, but yet these two guys are either hitting the woodwork, or in Tony's case, he's just not really playing in the way we expected him to. It's a lot of coming deep and flicking balls on for Mbeumo, who can't finish his dinner, which doesn't help things. So yeah, it's frustrating, and I think after this Newcastle game, I think those of us who have double Brentford will certainly be moving down to single Brentford attacker, and before long we might end up with none at all.
Absolutely. Yep. The final on this list for the season data is João Cancelo, 77th on the list, which is low, especially when you reach James at 25th, Trent at 17th. I think they're the only defenders on this list, so not necessarily terrible for a defender to be that low down. Obviously, there's midfield and attackers you'd expect to be more involved in goals, but it's just interesting when you look at Trent being 17th on this list. It just shows what an incredible season that he's having and kind of carrying on from the tail end of last year. When you look at the player data last 4, though, it's again interesting. I mean, Kane doesn't fare much better. He rises up to kind of 35th. Ronaldo, though, right down there, 44th for him. He's just not getting chances at all. But I mean, look at Vardy, 75th over the last 4 for all players over the last 4 game weeks. I mean, it's just an incredible turnaround for him when he was just banging in goals for fun, completely off the ball. He's an absolute sell, isn't he? I mean, 450 minutes per expected goal involvement for Vardy. He's in my team. He's got to go.
It's almost like Vardy knows when his ownership shoots up in FPL. I think he keeps an eye on it, or someone lets him know, because he knows then when he takes it easy for a couple of games. Loads of people are going to sell him this week, and you know what's going to happen against Chelsea. It's almost a guarantee. He'll get a soft penalty, he'll stick it in, and he'll get 2 or 3 bonus points. So he's in my team as well. and it's a tricky one because I've only got one free transfer, which I'll talk about the options later. But for me, he's probably going to stay. Like you, I never get it right with Vardy. Going back to the title winning season as well. I had Mahrez from game week 1, but I avoided Vardy for the most of the season. He scored in 10 or 11 games in a row, and then you bring him in, and he goes quiet. And it was just, and he's one of those players. He's so frustrating because he's so hard to hit at the right times, and it's the same with Son. I've rarely hit Son at the right time either. Hopefully, I'm going to change that over the next couple of game weeks. But yeah, Vardy, if you can sell him easily this week, if you've got a bit of cash to upgrade, or if you've got 2 free transfers, maybe, yeah, I think before a Chelsea fixture seems like a good time to let him go.
Yeah, he's gone. He's gone for me. With that, I've got 2 transfers, so I've got a bit more to play with. I mean, it is good that we've seen a rise for Kane up to 35th, so he's 257 for minutes per expected goal involvement over the last 4, which is up from 259. I mean, it's not a massive increase, 2 minutes per expected goal. I mean, it doesn't bode too well for him. But Son's improved. He's up to 210, up from 42nd on the list. I mean, it's more a case of other players are performing worse over the last 4 than those 2 sort of performing better. I think Son's actually worse for expected goal involvement than his season data kind of lets go. So. Yeah, they're really, really tough, those 2, to sell. Like I said, to me, it's hit and hope with the fixtures they've got. Big improvement for João Cancelo, though, up to 25th from 77th. He's in line with like Reece James at 210. Trent's up to 16th as well. Right at the top of the list, though, we mentioned him earlier. There's Jared Bowen, 6th in the list. Expected goal involvement every 134.5. And don't forget, West Ham have had the hardest fixtures over the last 4 as well. So for him to be 6th on this list, he's definitely someone who I think is being overlooked.
Yeah, and I think he's a player that's kind of been overlooked for a couple of seasons now. He's such a good player. I think he was really good when he was at Hull, and he's been very consistent at West Ham. He's obviously one of David Moyes' favourites as well. He's always in the team. He's just got a lot going for him. He's got 2 feet. He's got the set pieces. He's just a quality player. He's a player I think that could play at a higher level as well. No disrespect to West Ham, they're doing really well, but maybe a really top team. I think was there a few rumours at one point that Liverpool might have been interested. I think he fits into that kind of system.
Yeah, he'd been a great signing for them, especially with AFCON starting.
Yeah. So yeah, the stats here back up what I've been seeing over the last couple of game weeks watching West Ham. Bowen has stood out, and yeah, like I said, if you fancy a double up or a lot of people don't have Antonio as well. If you're buying a West Ham asset, I think it's fine to go Bowen over Antonio if you want to do something else with your strikers.
Yeah, I mean, minutes per shot is often a good metric of attacking potential. Son 71 minutes per shot, Kane 60, Ronaldo 34, Bowen 29.3. So he's right up there with these kind of elite players. I mean, Salah's 22.5, Mane's 25.8. He's having a really good season for West Ham. Something to think about as a bit of a differential. Right, let's go through positions. Let's talk about goalkeepers. Obviously, Sanchez owners are having to decide what to do with him. If you've got Steele, it looks like you're probably okay. I think Houghton's confirmed. Not Houghton, Potter. I'm going back about 3 years. Potter's confirmed that Steele will start that game, despite us signing the Ajax old keeper or young keeper or something. So that's good news. If you haven't got him, you're probably going to have to move for someone else. Statistically, the best goalkeeper, if you look at XG prevented, is Edouard Mendy at 3.4, but Ramsdale is closing the gap up to 2.8 XG prevented against him. Down the bottom of the list, though, I couldn't believe this. Kasper Schmeichel and Nick Pope. Kasper Schmeichel is the worst performing goalkeeper in the league. He's 5.3. Is minus 5.3 is his XG prevented. I mean, I don't know what is going on with Leicester. We're talking about Vardy. We're talking about, poor performances. You just don't know what you're going to get from Leicester at the moment. I don't think Brendan Rodgers knows what to do with them, defensively or attack-wise. They seem to have a different team every week as well.
Yeah, they're a bit like Aston Villa this season. You never know what starting 11, what the formation's going to be. Is Barnes going to be playing? Is Iheanacho going to be playing? Obviously, hasn't helped Schmeichel. That is his defence at the start of the season. I think they were missing Johnny Evans. Soyuncu was really missing Johnny Evans at the start of the season as well. And, Pereira always seems to have niggles. So there's lots of chopping and changing And then, at the back as well, he's going between 4 at the back, 5 at the back. Amartey makes appearances from time to time. So, yeah, seems a bit of a mess at Leicester this season. No consistency of picks, of formations. And, yeah, it's again, given that, it's probably not that surprising to see Schmeichel, quite far down the list in terms of goalkeepers.
Yeah, Guaita's not doing too well in terms of the XG as well, minus 2.3. He is, he's playing for one of the league's best defences at the moment as well, which is kind of helping him. But yeah, it does indicate that he's underperforming on kind of what he should be doing. Ramsdale's, to me, is the pick. I mean, 2.8 XG prevented. He's making saves every 28.8 minutes, which is one of the best in the league. And yeah, Arsenal have tightened up massively. And Mark, the curse is broken. The Ramsdale curse of last year, when he pretty much single-handedly ruined your season, has been lifted because you've got him in your side and you've got his quite big hauls for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's been nice. You wouldn't believe how hard it was for me to buy him this season, given last season. If most people watching will know or listening, if you've got a player and he's almost single-handedly destroyed your rank or your mini league position for a long period of time, it's really hard to go back to that player. And it took every ounce of strength in my body to forgive him and give him another chance. And thankfully, it's paid off over the last couple of game weeks. And I think it's a good lesson in FPL. You've got to forgive and forget, clean slate.
Yes.
As hard as it is to do. When it comes to Ramsdale, for me, first of all, when Arsenal signed him, I didn't understand why they priced him at 4.5 million when Leno was 5. So straight away, you've got an underpriced asset. And he doesn't have to do a huge amount at 4.5 million to be a good option. Arteta was getting pretty decent defensive performances out of Arsenal last season as well. And they just seem to have really, shored it up. Ben White, good addition. Gabriel coming back in has made a big difference. And that little triangle in their centre of defence along with Ramsdale just seems to have really shored things up. And I've been impressed with Lokonga as well. When he plays with Partey, it gives an awful lot of protection to those guys at the back. And Ramsdale, I think he's underpriced. I think he should have been 5 million. And, he makes lots of saves. His distribution has been really impressive, which obviously helps him with his bonus points as well. And I just think if we're going to have an Emi Martinez or something close to it this season, I think Ramsdale has the most potential out of all the cheap goalkeepers to be this season's Emi Martinez.
Yep, and I think he's going to be our goalkeeper at the World Cup as well. I think he does everything Pickford does, but slightly better. I mean, his distribution just seems as good. He's a better shot stopper. I think he's commanding as well, which is what Arsenal lacked at the back. I really like him. Would you say he's if you're on the wild card, if you're getting rid of Sanchez, do you think Ramsdale is the one to go? Or would you consider Guaita or someone else?
I think on recent game week performances, I think it's an easy pick for goalkeepers now. I think, I did mention that I like Guaita, but I just think Ramsdale is a bit of a no-brainer at the moment.
Yep, agreed. I just want to pause it and just say we've got 1,300 people watching live, which is amazing. Thank you all for tuning in. Don't forget to like this stream and also subscribe to the channel. And of course, look out for Mark. FPL. I've got to call you FPL General. I was going to get confused with Mark Sutherland's. The Athletic podcast that you do, and obviously follow Mark on Twitter as well if you don't already. Although I'm sure everyone knows who he is. Got loads more followers than me, so yeah, you're a pretty big name to replace Mr. Southerns. Yeah, too many, too famous. Moving over to defenders then. So we've got, this is season data. No surprise, Trent number 1, 159.7 per expected goal involvement. Reece James then in second, 183. He's beating Chilwell by quite a lot, who's 360, who's sixth on the list. João Cancelo at third. So they're my three, Trent, James and Cancelo. It's nice to see that they're the three top defenders for expected goal involvement as well. Interesting, Dawson is up there on fifth. He's 4.9. And then it's kind of a load of players that I don't really think we're going to consider too much. I have highlighted Simicas. Interesting to see if he does get a run of games with Robertson out. I think Robertson went off, but then was back on the pitch to applaud the fans at the end. I don't think he was wearing a cast or a brace or a boot or anything, so he's probably not a massively severe injury, but definitely one to monitor. Lamptey as well, 10th. He's back. Is he back? Is ex-Lively Lamptey one that we can consider. Another wing back to consider if he does get a start run in the team, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Lamptey if you didn't mention him there, because to me, I'm seeing quite a few people talk about him, but to me it feels, I'm not going to say crazy, but given how long he's been out for and how careful they usually are with him, we're going into the busiest period of the season. What is it? 10 game weeks in 40 days. I just can't see Lamptey playing every game. So what are your thoughts as a Brighton fan? How many starts is he going to get over this busy spell? And is he worth it?
I don't think you can buy him. I think he's a great option when he plays. I think you see just how like camped up the pitch he is. Like sometimes he's like screaming for the ball like outside the penalty area when Brighton are mustering attack. He hasn't lost any of his sharpness, his attacking intent, his acceleration's still fast. He's just as good an option as he was last season. But we're going into Christmas. They're going to have to protect him. They cannot have another injury to his hamstrings like they had before. He's had surgery on it. I think he's probably going to start a fair amount of games over Christmas. But who do you drop if you've got Trent, James, Cancelo, and Livramento? You can't drop Livramento for him. I think he's a big risk, and I think he's someone that could come on as well if Brighton are struggling and they want to get some more attacking threat down the wing. Yeah, I love him, but I can't endorse him, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, brilliant player, so exciting, but he's just too fragile for my liking.
Yeah.
Maybe come back to him after Christmas when things calm down in terms of fixtures.
I think so. I think he's going to be an option after Christmas. I think when things sort of get back to normal, and I mean, so many game weeks coming up. I think just wait on him until then. 22nd on this is Reguilon. I've highlighted him as well. 546.9. He's someone that is people are looking at. Emerson Royale isn't on this list, but like we mentioned, he's been looking maybe the more attacking one out of the two of them under Conte, in a very, very small sample that we've seen. If you were going to buy one of Reguilon or Royale, who'd you go for?
I think it's a close call now, but I still think Reguilon, to me, he's just the more natural player in the final third. He doesn't want to defend Reguilon, he just wants to bomb forward. I think I see Emerson Royale as more of a defender than I do Reguilon. So yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with either. And I think it's quite hard to predict which one is going to score more points over the next 4 game weeks, for example. But yeah, Reguilon just slightly edges it for me. I love a left-footed player.
Yeah. Notable omission from this list of 30 is the FPL favourite Livramento, not featuring in the top 30 defenders for minutes per expected goal involvement. I mean, you mentioned earlier people bought him for his attacking returns. He got the goal, but if these expected stats for anything to go by, they're going to be few and far between, and it is going to be the clean sheets that we get from him. I still think he's okay to bench, despite the fact he keeps returning. I still think there's players that you can play over him. Norwich aside, I don't feel too bad about benching Livramento. I don't see him getting huge hauls, and getting 6 points on your bench is okay, especially when you've got Cancelo, Trent, and others delivering big returns. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I still kind of view Livramento as a bench player as well. I've benched him most game weeks. Might have got the points once or twice off the bench, but yeah, I've kind of got him penciled in to start this one against Norwich.
Yeah,
probably not as attractive now, given that Dean Smith's there and not Daniel Farke. Maybe Norwich will have a bit of a bounce at the weekend, but yeah, Livramento, he's been brilliant, but I still view him as a bench player. At the end of the day, he was 4 million when most of us bought him, and I still kind of view him as a bench filler, but albeit a really good one.
Yep. Midfielders then are next. So Mahrez top, yeah, we're bored of you, Mahrez. Featuring Barkley's somehow managed to enter into second place as well. Need to kind of filter these by his minutes played. Kind of Barkley second on the list. But yeah, Gundogan and Jota both up there, as we talked about, doing well. Elise as well for Palace. When he plays, he's 129.1, which is actually 6th on the list of expected goal involvement, non-penalty. Something to think about. I mean, talk about Palace options. You've got Elise, you've got Zaha, and you've got Gallagher as well. They're 3 good options, I think, that are real differentials to kind of pick. I guess with Elise, it's just the minutes. I think Gallagher probably is. I said Zaha last. It's funny how things can change around. I said Zaha last week, but I think I'm leaning towards Gallagher now as being the one.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Gallagher kind of rules Zaha out of the game in a way. It's very hard to justify paying the extra cash for Gallagher. We've got a. I know it's always a small sample size in FPL, but at least 11 game weeks in, Gallagher was looking good after 4 game weeks. He's still looking good after 11 game weeks. I think it is sustainable from what I've been watching on the pitch as well. Like I
Mm.
said, gets into such good positions. He's got the license to get forward when he's got the other midfielders who do the defensive work. Just such a good player. So yeah, if I was buying a Palace midfielder this week, I think it would be Gallagher because just save the cash and then use it probably in your defence.
But if you're feeling brave, Elise at 5.4 statistically is the more likely player to get returns according to the expected data. Although again, small sample size with him, he hasn't played too many minutes. Just before we move on, I just want to talk about Son at 30th as well. I mean, 30th of all midfielders for expected goal involvement. I know I keep banging the drum about Spurs and these two, but we're going to need to see huge improvements from them to justify the money. Mark pointed out to me before we came on Smith Rowe, who's my favourite player at the moment. He's down in 65th for expected goal involvement. He's getting very lucky. If you look at it, he's not having many shots or many chances, but he's clinical. He's taking his chances really well. Got another goal against the mighty San Marino. Just to give a bit of context, though, Sancho's 66th, so one after him with 3-4-4. So yeah, do you think? I mean, Smith Rowe. Lots of people are buying him. Obviously, it's Liverpool away next. What do you make of him? His price has gone up quite a bit now. He's entering like nearly the 6 million mark. Do you think it's sustainable what he's doing, or do you think there's better options?
Yeah, I really like him. Really like him. Good to see him get his goal on international duty as well. And he's a bit like Gallagher. He just has that nice knack of being in the right place at the
Mm.
right time, and he's a good finisher
Like
as
like
well.
Ramsey, right? Ramsey was so good at doing that,
Yeah,
arriving from deep
I
and
think
scoring.
Smith Rowe has got huge potential, and
Mm.
we said it kind of at the end of last season, and going into this season, we thought this could be the budget gem that we need in midfield, and I think it is sustainable. He's not going to score 3 and 3. He's not going to. Obviously, that's not sustainable. But at 5.8 million, you don't need him to do an awful lot. But it's looking at these numbers when I'm thinking about players like Gallagher, like Smith Rowe. I automatically think I would rather have a 6 million defender. So if that is the case, and that's the way I'm thinking, why not
Yeah.
go with four at the back or five at the back, and cut out these middle guys in midfield who might continue to do well, but at least with the defenders, you're getting the clean sheet potential and the attacking potential. So yeah, it's all signs are pointing towards invest that cash at the back.
Yeah. I mean, I love Smith Rowe, but I do agree. I mean, I got Smith Rowe for 5.3, which I think is probably one of the best bits of FPL business I've ever done. Because would I get him now for 5.8? It feels a little bit like chasing points, especially when you look at these stats and kind of the next game obviously quite tough, but he is a great player. I mean, it's no coincidence that Arsenal are playing better with him in the side. Saka's there as well, who's absolutely brilliant, and Sambi Lokonga you mentioned, and Ramsdale as well. They're relying on like young players to kind of carry them forward and take them to the next level. And amazingly, you've got to say Arteta's doing quite a good job at the moment.
Yeah,
When
yeah.
I think we kind of wrote him off after the first couple of games.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, fair
Here,
play.
here's a question. Here's a question for you, and I'm sure plenty of people will be thinking. If you're selling in Bumo this week or next week, would you go Smith Rowe or Gallagher?
Oh, that is a good question. I think I'd go for Gallagher out of
Yeah, I
the two.
think I'm in the same boat. I think it's close, but I think on what I've seen so far, I think Gallagher just offers slightly more.
Yeah, I mean, they're the same price. If you look at these stats, it's an expected goal involvement, non-penalty for Gallagher of 177 and 343 for Smith Rowe. So you're almost twice as likely to get some kind of attacking return from Gallagher as you are
Yeah,
Smith
very
Rowe.
similar assets in many
Yeah,
ways because Smith Rowe takes corners as well. Gallagher takes his fair share. So yeah, there's very little between them. But yeah, Gallagher just looks amazing.
yep. I'm getting stick in the chat like I always do for talking about Spurs. Mark Dorney, I think Az is over justified not bringing Spurs assets. Any other team who would be bringing an attacker in, genuinely, do you believe that? Because I can't remember a top team like Spurs, having this poor attacking stats and their two main players being this low down on these things, and everyone sort of clamoring to get them. It really is like a kind of, I mean, not nostalgic because it only happened kind of last season, but I haven't ruled out bringing one in this week because I do think things surely have to get better for them, and I'm not seeing huge amount of other options anywhere. But I think you've got to really analyse these players and kind of think to yourself, I don't think we're gonna suddenly see Spurs scoring 4 or 5 goals in the fixtures that they've got to come. Well, at least these stats don't indicate that even remotely. So I would disagree. I don't think it's just. I don't even hate Spurs that much. I don't know why I've got this reputation. I don't mind them. They're all right. They're not my worst team in the league. But yeah, I just think it is. I just worry about the creativity they've got. Like Conte can't just suddenly conjure up a creative midfielder from the side. He's got to work with what he's got until he buys one. And I think Lo Celso is going to be key to unlocking them. But I have my doubts about him.
I think this week is a good example. It's only Tuesday, but we're already seeing the Kane momentum start to build. And I think we all need to be careful this week. By the time it arrives to Friday, you've got to stick to your, go back to what you were thinking at the start of the international break before Kane did anything for England. And if you were beating a drum of he's terrible, he's not worth 12 million, you should stick to your guns, because there's going to be, and for a fact, there's going to be people this week who end up buying Kane on Friday night who had absolutely no intention of buying him because Twitter feels like everyone's buying him. People are probably going to captain him come Friday night, Saturday morning. So you've got to be careful not to get caught up. And I find it's happening to myself this week. I have no interest in Kane. As the weekend gets closer, there's lots of Kane content online. It starts feeding into your thought process. Oh, the fixtures are good. He's surely going to turn the corner. It would take a -4 for me to get Kane, which is probably going to be what's going to stop me. But hopefully that will be a blessing in disguise. So yeah, I think it's a good example, Kane, this week of how people can get swept along by the crowd, and just keep that in mind when it comes to Friday night. If you're making a decision to transfer Harry Kane in, just press pause and say, am I buying him because I really want him and I think he's going to do well, or am I buying him because everyone on Twitter is buying him? So yeah, it's something to be aware of this week.
Very, very good point. I mean, I have absolutely no doubts that Conte will get Spurs improving. He'll get them up the table. He'll improve on all these metrics, all these stats. Kane will become options at some point this season. I've got no doubt. It's just he needs time, and like he hasn't had a week with his squad yet. They're all he needed this week with them to get them all. How can you instill tactics in a team when you don't have your squad with you, when they're all halfway around the world? So it's going to be late for him getting some of these players back. He needs next week with them. I'm pretty set, I think, on waiting a week on Spurs and seeing how they perform against Leeds, letting Conte work his magic with them for a bit, and then addressing it after that. I think that's the plan. But I'll probably get swept away with all the Twitter talk like you mentioned. Forwards then, I'm going to mention Kane again, 27th on the list out of 30 that we've got. I'm not going to bang that drum anymore. I'll just get slated some more. Tony as well doing poorly. I've highlighted a few more. I've highlighted Hwang and Jimenez, 19th and 20th respectively. 212 minutes-ish for expected goal involvement, non-penalty. I mean, they're very different in price. I mean, they're 2 million difference. I think Hwang is the better option, but I wouldn't be expecting huge hauls from Wolves strikers going forward. I don't know. They're a weird team, Wolves, aren't they? Because I thought they'd be really, really attacking this season, but it's their defence that's really impressed, and they just can't really seem to get the most out of their attacking options.
Yeah, again, it's like the midfielders. If you get to the point where you're considering buying a Wolves striker, the price difference does, it makes more sense to get Hwang, but at 5.8 million, just give me another defender. I wish we could pick more than 5 defenders because I've got a lot more faith in the premium defenders to score more points than Hwang, over the long term. So yeah, he hasn't really been in my thoughts at any point this season. I love Jimenez. I've loved him over the last couple of seasons, but yeah, Wolves just doesn't scream goals to me. So yeah, don't really have much interest there.
No. Antonio though, 4th on the list. I mean, he's the best out of the kind of options that we're considering. Daka's first, Firmino's second, Cavani's third, and then it's Antonio. We talked about patience with him and keeping him. He's just keep him. I can't see a reason to sell him when you haven't got strikers who are doing as well. I mean, Ronaldo's up there in 5th despite not having the best of starts. I really do think this Watford game could be a big haul for him. which, I mean, sounds pretty obvious when you say it's Ronaldo and the fact it's pretty much the worst team in the league. But I've said it now, so yeah, we'll go with that. Lukaku's there as well in 6th. They need him back. Be interesting to see if he can become a factor in our seasons again. He's training, I think. I think they earmarked him to come back after the international break, so you've got to think he's going to be back in the side as well. And this is where it's going to test our resolve of having premium defenders and big, benches and all this kind of stuff, because you've got to think Lukaku's going to play almost every minute over the Christmas period and hopefully deliver.
Yeah, Lukaku's a tricky one because when we owned him before his injury, he was pretty disappointing, and I think the injury did us a favour in being able to sell him. So yeah, even though he's back soon, he's not really in my thoughts. I think having 2 Chelsea defenders probably feels enough from the Blues. But again, hopefully Lukaku does come back in and start firing, because we need a shake up. It's very boring these days looking in many leagues. Everyone has 9 or 10, obviously, in the starting 11. So we need the likes of Kane, we need Lukaku, we need Ronaldo, we need decisions to make. In particular with captaincy as well, to take it away from Salah. So hopefully Lukaku does come back with a bang. But I wasn't overly encouraged by him in those games that he did play before the injury.
No, and I look back at some of the the early black boxes I did when Ronaldo and Lukaku both signed, and we did whole videos about Lukaku and how he's going to change everything up, and Ronaldo was coming in and all this kind of thing. I mean, to be fair, Mark said that United would struggle to create chances with him in the side, and I think he's been vindicated in that. But yeah, there was a lot of excitement and hype around this freemium type thing, which hasn't really kind of transpired due to various factors. But yeah, it'd be good to see him come in and shake things up, like you mentioned. Right, predictions then. I had a bad week. Mark will be happy to know. I only got 3 out of 10 right. Mark got 4. He beat me on everything this week. Clean sheets, correct scores. He got 2, I got 1, and more outcomes, which means he's closing the gap. 47.3. I've dropped under 50% correct outcomes. He's on 44.5. He's got 9 correct scores to my 11 and 20 correct clean sheets to my 23, which is actually a better success rate than mine, 44.4. He's got 20 out of 45 predicted right. So I need to be careful that I don't lose this, because it's not as close as, well, it's much closer than my rank to his. Game week fixtures, quite interesting. We all went sort of fairly different on these. We'll go through these kind of fairly quickly. But Leicester-Chelsea, I went for a 3-1. Mark went for a 2-0. You went for a 2-1. All backing a Chelsea victory in this. I can't see any way Leicester win this game. Can you?
Nah, it's got to be 3 points for Chelsea. Given what we said earlier about Leicester, don't even know what kind of lineup they're going to set up with, and Chelsea are just on another level compared to Leicester. So Chelsea win all day from
Chelsea win, absolutely. Villa Brighton, I'm the only one that's gone for a Brighton win. Gerrard's come in, but you're interested to see how he sets up. Lots of talk about the wing backs or fullbacks cash and targets, if he can make them a better option. You went for a 0-0, Mark went for a 1-1. It's disappointing Brighton against Newcastle, for so in control for like 35 minutes. Just started making some sloppy mistakes, carried it on to the second half, played really poorly, and Newcastle nicked the draw. But I think Aston Villa are just all over the place at the moment. Can Gerrard fix that in the couple of week he's had? We're still a decent side, but you think just you think of the most boring of draws, 0-0.
Yeah, I always associate Brighton with boring games and low scoring games, given the way they play. So I went for a 0-0, but if you had to push me and ask me to pick a winner, I probably would say Brighton, because Gerrard's got a big job on to fix things. They've been dreadful defensively so far this season. So I'm not planning to sit down and watch that one, that's for sure.
Boring game. 2-0 down against Liverpool, and we come back and draw 2-2. Do you not see the Brentford game? Last minute winner. We're dynamic. Well, we weren't dynamic against Newcastle, to be fair. We were absolutely awful. Burnley Palace, I've gone for a 1-1. You and Mark have both backed Palace to win. 2-0 for you, 1-0 for Mark. Yeah, I mean, Palace probably should win this game. I just think Burnley like to spoil parties, and there's so much hype about Palace at the moment. It'd be such a Dyche performance just to come in and just sort of eke out a draw. But Palace probably the favourites.
Yeah, I mean, Burnley got the point against Chelsea, but should have been about 4-0 down by the time they got their equaliser. So I think on that performance and given Crystal Palace good performance against Wolves, I'm backing them just to continue with the momentum and get another 3 points.
Yep, very true. Newcastle-Brentford, really interesting game this. Howe's first game in charge. Brentford completely off the boil. I went for a draw. Nice boring 1-1. Mark went for a Newcastle win, 2-1, and you went for a fairly sizable Brentford win in 3-1. You think Brentford are going to, completely turn it around this match?
I think the fact that I'm so frustrated with Mbeumo and Tony, and the fact that it could be the last performance for both of them in my squad, and this is a very hopeful prediction of a good performance. Hopefully Newcastle are still poor defensively, like they have been all season. Yep. And hopefully Brentford can convert those good underlying attacking numbers into goals. And if they do win 3-1, I guarantee it, Tony and Mbeumo will still find a way to get 2 points.
Absolutely. It'll be a pin-it goal, won't it, that no one owns. Tends to be the way. Norwich Southampton next. None of us are backing a Dean Smith masterclass. All going for a Southampton win here. You and I both going for 2-0. Mark going for a 2-1. Interested to know who lines up front for Southampton if Browyer's fit. They've got Armstrong and they've got Che Adams as well. I was thinking about maybe getting Armstrong in for Vardy, but I think it's maybe a bit too much. I don't know. I think Armstrong probably will start and then it'll be one of Adams or Bowyer, but both have been in good form. I mean, Bowyer's been good when he's played, and Adams has got, I think, 2 goals over the international break as well. Feels like there's maybe a bit too risky.
Yeah, I think when you're buying a striker from, let's say, a lower half team in the league, you don't want to have any question marks. No. You want to buy a Callum Wilson, who plays every week. Armstrong has been really good the last 2 games. I think he starts against Norwich, but it's after that, does he keep his place if he has a performance against Norwich? So yeah, when there's 3 strikers fighting for 2 places, I think it's just easier to stay away.
Yep, no, I agree. Watford United, you've both backed to 3-1. I went for 2-0, which is very hopeful for United to keep a clean sheet, but it is Watford. So I mean, this is what I mean. I think with Ronaldo, if we're backing goals in this game, you've got to think he's going to be involved. I mean, he normally eats up teams like Watford, sort of lower half, bottom fodder teams. Surely he's going to get some chances.
I think it's a Ronaldo kind of game. I think we should score at least 3 goals against Watford, given how poor they've been this season. And if he starts, which he should, surely he's involved in some of those goals. So yeah, and I've put down Watford to score in this one because going back to that table we seen earlier, you just can't back us for clean sheets at the moment. Watford do have good attacking talent. Josh King, Ismail Sarr, they will get chances and they probably will score. I just hope we score a lot more than they do.
Yep. Wolves West Ham next. We've all gone for a West Ham win. Not too surprising. West Ham have been great. Wolves a bit inconsistent. I went for a 1-0 just because Wolves don't tend to concede too many goals. You went for a 2-1. Mark went for a 2-0. Not too much to say about them, right? It's hard to back against West Ham against anyone.
Yeah, again, I think most people picking a prediction in that one will go for a West Ham win, especially after beating Liverpool. They're going to be coming into this one full of confidence and, expect nothing else other than 3 points. Hopefully it's Antonio getting those 2 goals.
Yep, I think he scored tonight for Jamaica. And he scored earlier, didn't he? He scored a solo goal. He just ran through everyone and just slotted it in. I love that guy. He's such a good player. Liverpool-Arsenal, 5:30 game on Saturday. Loads of games on Saturday. Only 2 games on the Sunday. Great day of football. I've gone for 2-1 Liverpool. Mark went for 2-0. You went for 3-1. 3-1 Liverpool. So, a bit of a rout against Arsenal.
Went for 3-1, but maybe on reflection, I think it could be a little bit closer than my prediction suggests here. I think Arsenal are pretty solid. So, maybe if I was doing that again, maybe a 2-1, maybe not a 2-goal victory, especially now, Firmino's out. There was a couple of question marks over Mane. Seems like he's going to be okay though, but Robertson, if he's not playing, it does weaken Liverpool as well. So maybe a 2-1 rather than a 3-1 there.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who, what the injury news is with Liverpool. I'll be doing team news video with Neil for Scout on Friday, so pay attention to that. We'll get all the news about Mane and Robertson, and I think Origi's a doubt as well. They're sort of bare bones a little bit, but yeah, I mean Jota should definitely start in that game. Interesting one with City Everton. I've gone for 2-0. Mark went for a 3-0. He went for a 4-0. 4-0 City. You're expecting Everton to get absolutely battered.
Yeah, Everton have been disappointing this season. We expect Rafa Benitez to come in and be number one clean sheet orientated, but I think it's a bit like Conte at Spurs. No matter how good you are as a manager, if you haven't got the pieces for the chess game, it's quite hard to implement your style. So Everton, I think, have got some pretty poor defenders, and I don't really rate the goalkeeper either. And I think City will just have 70% possession, have loads of chances, and I think people like Phil Foden will probably do well. So yeah, I think it could be, if City want to win 4-0, they probably can. Just depends what kind of mood they're in, or whether they're in second gear or fourth gear.
Yep, completely agree. And the final game, now you are being hopeful here. Come on. A 4-2 prediction from you for Spurs against Leeds. I've gone for a 2-1. Mark went for a 2-0. 4 goals. After all we've heard tonight, are you tempted to change that?
I went, I think what happened here was I did all my Saturday scores first, and then I got to Sunday and thought, you know what, those Saturday ones are pretty boring. So I'm gonna spice things up here, threw in two exciting ones. Hopefully it's a super Sunday with loads of goals. So yeah, I think Spurs Leeds, like you said earlier, could be 0-0, could be 4-4. So hopefully it's the latter. Hopefully there's loads of goals. Hopefully Son scores all 4 and Kane gets maybe 1 assist and no goals. Hopefully there's goals in that one.
Just the 10 goals predicted for you on 2 games on Sunday. So yeah, it would be a super Sunday if that happens. Excellent. So Captain Matrix. Oh, this is very depressing. This is a very depressing part of this podcast. We got Game Week 12, Salah as the kind of primary candidate. Game Week 13, Salah as the primary candidate. Game Week 14, Salah. And Game Week 15, Salah. We've got some other differentials this week. We've got Kane in there and Son, obviously. Ronaldo, who I've talked about. Lukaku's in there, could come back against Leicester. Feels a bit risky. Foden, though, if you're predicting 4 goals for City against Everton, he's highly likely to be involved. Realistically, though, we're not going... Well, I might. If I bring in Ronaldo, I will definitely captain him. It's just if I do that, or if I go for a Spurs player, or if I do something else. I don't really know. We're going to talk about what I'm going to do in a minute. I don't really know what I'm going to do. But if I think Ronaldo is the best option. It's just, do you actually bring him in for 1 week just to captain him?
So you're 100% setting captaining him if you do get him.
Yeah. Otherwise, there's no point in bringing him in. I might as well just get someone else, and it's literally for 1 week that I'd be bringing him in.
To try and maximise it, I guess it makes sense. And I think it's the same for people with Kane. If they're going to bring him in for Leeds, you probably got to go the whole way and captain him as well. Salah, for me, I've got it on him at the moment, and I don't feel as strongly about Salah this week as I have maybe for the last 3 or 4 game weeks as a captain. I just think Arsenal is not an easy fixture, and some of those other guys do have really nice fixtures. Spurs guys in particular, Ronaldo, who you mentioned, and I do like Foden. I don't have Foden, but if I did have him, if you're really looking for a differential, I backed a 4-0 in that game. So if I'm backing a 4-0, why not back Foden as captain? I think Pep always scares me off though with captain and Man City players. I think owning them is enough. So I'm leaning towards Salah. I guess my only other option is Son, who I own. I am tempted, but yeah, it's very hard to look past Salah at the moment. So I'm probably going to be boring and stick with it.
Interesting, but you would go for Kane if you had him.
Would I go for Kane if I had him? I think when it comes to captaincy for me, I think penalties always plays a big factor. And that's why I'm less inclined to captain Son over Kane. It's a funny one because I think Son versus Kane, I think Son is the better option FPL-wise. But then if I owned Kane, I think I'd be more inclined to captain him. It's funny. I think the penalties plays a part in my thinking there.
Yeah, just gives you more routes, and I mean free kicks as well.
And when you start having to overthink it, it just defaults back to Salah. He has the penalties. He plays for the much better side. We should remember. I always try and you got to back the team as well as a player. Who would you back in the bookies? You're going to back Liverpool. Are you going to back Spurs? It's going to be Liverpool all day long. So yeah. Hard to go against the Egyptians.
Well, it's one of the issues with Ronaldo is he might be off penalties. When we saw Fernandes take and miss the last one that he had for United, is it going to come back to Ronaldo, or are they going to let Fernandes take it again? I was 99.99999% sure Ronaldo was going to be on pens, but just don't know what Ole's thinking is.
Yeah, it's still pretty unclear. I think I was one of the ones who thought Fernandes would keep them, but it feels like it's up in the air as much as it ever has been now. Yeah. So maybe Harry Maguire will step up and
oh God, can you imagine? I think Rose Ed wouldn't be high enough. Yeah, well, just a bit more on captains then. I mean, Salah's obviously got the most goals. He's got the most assists of the players we're looking at. He's had the most. He takes the least minutes to have a shot, and he's got the best mins per XGI. It's purely just down to opponents, really. Watford are the worst when it comes to minutes per big chance conceded, and minutes per XG conceded. Leeds don't fare too well. They're bottom for mins per chance conceded, so not big chances, but they concede a lot of kind of the smaller chances, which is good news for Son and Kane, who can kind of capitalise on that. But yeah, Arsenal do pretty well on this. They've definitely tightened up quite a lot. And Wolves, for people kind of considering Antonio as well, Wolves have sort of really, really good defensive numbers, which is why I just went for a 1-0 to West Ham. So to me, it's a kind of just a formal fixtures debate. It's just whether you go with Salah with the form, but the harder fixture, or whether you take a punt on one of these kind of, Watford or Leeds can concede a couple to Spurs. It's a very interesting one.
See when you're talking about bringing Ronaldo in there to give him the armband, in terms of your thought process, are you kind of thinking it's just an opportunity? You're sitting at 10k now. Are you thinking, if Salah has a quiet one like he has done the last 2 game weeks, are you just trying to capitalise, hope Ronaldo goes big, and shoot yourself towards the top 1k? Is that the kind of thinking there? Just try and capitalise?
Yeah, I mean the thinking is that I just don't think I'm going to go without Salah. I'm looking at the fixtures. I'm just not seeing an opportunity to do it apart from this week. And looking at Arsenal having improved and having a system that seems to be working and a good goalkeeper, and Liverpool with the injuries that they might have. I think a lot of it depends on that. I think if Liverpool were kind of, if Mane's back and Origi's fine and Robertson's okay and they've got kind of a full strength squad, it might sort of talk me out of it. But if they're going into that with a half fit squad and a tough game, I think it probably represents a decent chance. And I just don't trust Spurs at all, because if Spurs had any semblance of form and had looked better against Everton under Conte, I'd definitely be considering grabbing Kane or Son and going with them, but they didn't. So it just feels to me that Ronaldo is the best other option other than Salah this week.
Yeah, I'm feeling a bit conflicted as well, because what I'm trying to do, this season, I've kind of forgot about trying to get a top 10k finish. What I'm trying to do is win FPL at some point in my career, and sitting at 34k now, a week like this feels like maybe there's an opportunity. Salah, yes, we know how much he can hurt you if he does what he did against Manchester United and you didn't captain him. People are still trying to recover from that. But I think, if we're saying Arsenal have tightened up, are a difficult fixture, then why, we probably should give the other guys, at least some consideration. And like you say, in future game weeks, Salah is probably going to be an easy captain pick when the others have trickier fixtures, and he's got better fixtures than Arsenal. So I think, for the rest of this week, I don't want to just say auto captain Salah and not think any more about it. I'm going to think about the likes of Son. I would need a -4 to get Kane, but even some of the people who have the likes of Foden and Ronaldo, like you, I think Ronaldo is as good a captaincy option as Salah this game week. And if it is a low scoring game against Arsenal, let's say, even if Salah just scores 1, if Ronaldo can get 2 or 3, or players like Kane and Son can get braces, the way I'm looking at my rank now is 34k. If things fall in your favour, which they can in any given game week, you can absolutely fly, from 34k to top 5k overnight. So it is tempting.
It's tricky to know when to kind of like consolidate and just accept I'm in the top 10k. Let's just play it safe and go with that. That's just not how I want to play it. Like I want to push on for the the absolute top positions. And I've spent the last 3 seasons clawing my way to sort of around the 100k mark from about 500,000-600,000. Why not try and claw myself up to the 1k when I'm in a good position and I can still have a decent season, even if it does go completely wrong? And like, I know people got burnt by Havertz a few weeks ago and going for him over Salah, but like, you could replay those 2 games 100 times. And how many times did Salah get a hat-trick and assist at Old Trafford, and Havertz gets nothing in a 7-0?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say to the managers who did get burned by Havertz, don't let it influence your captaincy decision this week. If you think Ronaldo or Son is a better captaincy candidate than Salah this week, do it, because like you say, in any given one game week, anything can happen.
Yeah, it's very hard to separate the emotion out with. I mean, it's why we love FPL, right? Because we all are so invested in it and get so emotional about these kind of things. And I can't. If I had done that, I think I did a tweet and said if I had Jota and we were all pretty sure he wasn't going to play, and I could have swapped him out for a -4 for Havertz, I would have done it. I didn't have him, luckily, and someone said to me, "Would you captain him as well?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, probably go the full way." I mean, you're looking at 40 points down if you'd done that move. It would have been an absolute disaster. You look at Mark early in the season taking Torres out before that Arsenal game, the amount of points he lost. It's hard not to let those decisions affect you. But like you say, you need to kind of keep a clear head and not get too bogged down by it. All right, let's take a look at our teams then going into this week, because I've talked to death about my plans. I've got Ramsdale in goal, Trent, Cancelo, James, Livramento. I'm very happy with that back four. Salah, Foden, Raphinho, Mbommo. I'm happy with 3 of them. I'm definitely not happy with Mbommo. And then Vardy and Tony, and I'm not happy with them either. On my bench at the moment, I've got Foster, Antonio, Duffy and Smith Rowe. I think Antonio will probably come in for someone. I'm not entirely sure who yet. I've got 2 free transfers. So I haven't got the exact money to do Vardy to Ronaldo. I'd have to do Vardy and Duffy to a kind of a cheaper defender. And then Ronaldo would come in. So it's 2 transfers for Ronaldo, but still for free. I could do Vardy to Kane for free, which is annoying because that seems probably the more sensible thing to do, but I don't really want him. That's the problem. Or I could do Vardy and Mbommo I could afford anyone up to Armstrong, 5.9, and do Mbommo to Son. So they're the 3 things I'm considering. I genuinely don't know which one I'm going to do. I don't know. Any thoughts?
I think the way I've always played the game as well is try and take as much frustration out of the game. So having done this show with you tonight, I think you've got to back your own instinct, and your instinct is Ronaldo. So, and you keep bashing Kane, so you really shouldn't buy him because, I always think in that scenario, fast forward to Monday next week, what will make you more frustrated if you bought Kane and he blanked, or if you didn't buy Ronaldo and he scored a brace. I think that's the way I try and simplify the decision-making process.
I don't think I wouldn't be frustrated if I didn't buy Kane and he hauls. Like if he gets a hat-trick against Leeds, I just have to hold my hand up and just say, fair enough, I just didn't see that coming. Like it was completely against everything I've seen and read and all the research I've done. But yeah, if Ronaldo did bang and I didn't have him, then I would be like, yeah, I kind of thought that would happen. So yeah, I think you're probably right. Son is someone that interests me though. I think he's not featured too highly on this list, but like you say, he's looked good. Like eye test wise, he's looked decent. He's been the only player I think really that's kind of impressed me with Spurs. So he. What was your
route to Son? Is it losing Mbeumo and Vardy?
Yeah.
And who would you put in the Vardy spot?
Well, that's the question. I could afford Armstrong, who I could then play against Norwich, but then again I've got quite a strong squad. Again, maybe it's time to take some money out. It's just who do you really go to down from there? Like you're looking at Broja down to 5, but I don't think he's going to play enough. So then I'm looking at getting a 4-5 striker, Dane Scarlett or someone. I don't know. I don't really like not having 3 strikers. I hate that 4.5 forward like bench option. It just annoys me because you're not going to get anything from him. Yeah, I don't know. I'll probably get Ronaldo. And captain him. That's maybe what I'll do.
Sounds good.
Your team, you got Ramsdale in goal, just like me. Same back 4, except you've got Chilwell instead of James. Trent, Cancelo and Livramento. You've got Salah, captain. You've got Son in place. And you've got Raphinha. And you've got Vardy, Tony, Antonio. I mean, we've got very similar teams, haven't we? We've got about 9 the same.
Everyone does these days, to be fair.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I've only got 1 free transfer, which makes things a little bit trickier. Like I said, top targets: Reece James, Jota, Foden, and then possibly Harry Kane for the fixture. So I mean, Vardy to Kane, I think is a totally fine transfer for people to make this week based on fixtures. If you can do it, you've got the cash. If it works out, fantastic. You're ahead of the game. If it doesn't work out, it's not the end of the world. It's not gonna define your season. So for me, at the moment, I'm leaning towards banking because to get any of those players I mentioned, it probably would be a -4, and I'm quite hit averse as a manager. And I think just looking at the starting 11, I think it looks totally fine. I don't mind Vardy against Chelsea because, like I say, he's still a top striker. He's got penalties. and it would be typical of him to score when a lot of people sell him. So I don't mind. The other reason why I don't mind keeping Vardy is looking further ahead. The 4 fixtures after the Chelsea game are really nice for Vardy. So if he did get something against Chelsea, I'd probably want to keep him then for those four next fixtures. So just keeping that option open, that if he does do something against Chelsea, maybe just keep him then. And I think I need 2 free transfers the following week to restructure. I might need to go back to 4 at the back, with Reece James, or I might need to get Harry Kane. I might need to get Jota or Foden. So it's obviously much easier to do so with 2 free transfers. So yeah, leaning towards banking.
Leaning towards banking, nice and boring, Mark, but very sensible.
That's me in a nutshell.
It has been quite nice to have 2 free transfers over the international break, because I mean it lets me move Ronaldo, right? Because if I wouldn't be doing it for a hit for sure. Also, Duffy worries me as well. With festive rotation coming and Lamptey back in the side and things, I think it's probably time to move him on. Take a look at Mark's team. So Mark's made a transfer already. He had 2 transfers. He's taken Sanchez out and got in Guaita. So he's clearly looking at the stats. He's got Cancelo, Trent and Chilwell, Salah, Foden, Son, Mbomo, Jota, Tony and Antonio. I mean, it's a very similar team to both of ours. He's got Jota in place, who he's obviously bangs on about all the time. But yeah, it's amazing when you look at this team and you think he's 60 points behind us or whatever it is, and the team doesn't look bad. Like, it's nothing wrong with it. It was, he wildcarded a few weeks ago and the wildcard looked pretty solid. He just, he had triple Brentford attack and triple Brentford and Hwang, and Jota hasn't performed and Son hasn't delivered for him yet. But I think he's going to be fairly confident going forward to turn around.
Yeah, looking at that team on paper, it's totally solid.
Yeah.
I would actually probably prefer to have that team than my own at the moment, because there's Foden in there and there's Jota, and I think those 2 could do really well over the next couple of game weeks.
Yep. I mean, he could even move in Mbomo to Gallagher or something like that, double up on Palace. Maybe he's been burnt by that already. But yeah, I'd love to mock you more, Mark, but I think your team is pretty solid. But yeah, 65 points where it is. You're not going to catch that up. Not quickly.
Enjoy it while it lasts, because he'll come for you. He'll come for you.
I said he won't catch me up quickly, but it'll probably be a slow and drawn out. Probably on like the last day of the season or something.
Yeah, exactly. He'll reel you in and he'll just stick the dagger in game week 38.
Oh, you just know it's going to happen, don't you? Great. So let's just go through the BlackBox Leagues quickly. We've got a new number 1, FPL Focal, joined us. Sorry, Mark, I've got rid of your video. Let me just pop that back in. All these screens, at least I only messed one up. You're back now. So FPL Focal's joined. So sorry, Tabs, but he's now number 1. The best bit of FPL Focal joining is that he's propelled us to, I think, 3rd in the overall league standings, which has always been my dream for FPL BlackBox League to be in the top 5. So, yeah, thanks, Oscar. Appreciate that. Tabs is in 2nd. Richard Sopf is in 3rd. Big score for him, 101 points this week, just like Oscar as well. Steve Sedman in 4th and Harry Jones in 5th. Yeah, you're all doing great. Apprentice League, I'm 771. Mark 706. Natalie's 676 and Henry is 666. So, yeah, Natalie's got 10 points on Henry. She'll be happy with that. She really wants to beat him this season. But yeah, they're luckily some way off Mark and I, because it'd be pretty embarrassing if they were smashing us in their first ever season. Let's take a look at the ticker quickly. Spurs have got the best fixtures over the next kind of 5 weeks. Newcastle look like they could prosper under Howe. They've got the second best. Brentford still a decent run in 3rd. The worst runs are for Watford. So Ranieri's got a job on him. Gerrard as well at Villa, second worst. And Everton, who just really to start picking up some points, have got a poor run. They've got City, Liverpool and Arsenal in the next 3. So probably not the time to be investing in the likes of Townsend and Gray and that lot. The last thing I want to mention before we go is the FPL Challenge. I mentioned this a few times on the pod. Essentially, every time Mark, not General, Mark Southerns, very confusing that, get a green arrow, we donate to the FPL Challenge. And it's a really good way of feeding starving people around the world. So if you want to get involved in that, check out the FPL Challenge on Share the Meal app, and you can give as little as 65p to help other people. Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure. having you on BlackBox. Thank you so much for stepping in for Mark Sevens. I would say you've definitely Livrammento'd it. And hopefully
did I get the 3 bonus?
You
That's
can have the 3, unlike Livramento, I don't think he's got 3 bonus yet. You can have all 3. Hopefully when Mark's back next month, hopefully we can do one with the 3 of us.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like I said, thank you for having me. I was buzzing to get the invite. As a big fan of the show, it was an absolute pleasure. So thank you very much.
You are more than welcome. And just under 2 hours. I did promise you that it wasn't going to be 2 hours, and then we did 1 hour 58. So it's not just Mark.
It's always going to happen.
Yeah, it's always going to happen. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. As I've mentioned before, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. But for now, I will see you soon.
Cheerio.